All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. This is the 7th installment in our series of training conversations put on by the International Transition Training Community of Practice. And very excited to have Rakesh here with us today to talk about creating harmonious teaching environments. I think I know you all. I'm Don Hall. I'll be the host for today, but mostly in the background, just handling the tech stuff. Feel free to use the chat at any time. If you need to communicate with me, if you have any kind of need. You can also, when we get to the Q&A portion of this, use the raise hand function to indicate that you'd like to ask a question. You can also just hold your hand up in the video screen, but it's sometimes a little bit easier to see the virtual hand. And that's about it. As that stay muted when you're not speaking, and if you are able to turn on your video, that's wonderful. But if not, that's okay too. So we have a great program here today. We're gonna go for about 2 hours with a 10-minute break about halfway through. And without any further ado, I'm gonna introduce Rakesh. An experienced permaculture designer, teacher, forest garden specialist, transition town initiator, yoga teacher, homeopath, and reggae DJ. Rakesh is also a member of the International Transition Trainers Community of Practice. Since 2009, he has led over 600 trainings on permaculture, ecovillage design, community building, and holistic life design. Rakesh is passionate about building communities, social permaculture, sociocracy, dragon dreaming, creating strong social bonds, and clarifying how to creatively meet your needs in a project or community. He's one of the founders of Children in Permaculture, Youth in Permaculture, the BIPOC Permaculture Network, the Roots in Permaculture Teachers Community, and the Roots in Permaculture Learning Community. You can learn more about him at his campsite bio, which I will post into the chat. So really thankful to have you here, sharing your knowledge, Rakesh, and turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Is the microphone level okay, by the way? Sometimes it comes out rather low. Wonderful. Yeah, and I'd like to say that introduction is all wrong. It's all completely wrong. I'm actually a reggae DJ who sometimes, occasionally in his spare time, teaches some permaculture, does some transition town stuff, and all the other things. So yeah, but the reggae DJ is my first love and my first passion. The rest is all for fun. So, but yeah, so yeah, thanks very much for the introduction. Yeah, so what I'd like to do is, well, actually, maybe a little story first. So as Don mentioned, I've run hundreds of permaculture courses, so short courses, long courses, 2-week courses, whether it's community building, whether it's permaculture and holistic life design, various things. And quite often, especially in the early days, people would say, wow, that's amazing. So many of us, 20, 30 of us all come together and no arguments, and at the end we all leave and everyone's like still in love with each other. Aren't we really lucky? And it's like, well, hang on a minute. There's a little bit of work involved, I think I did a few things that kind of helped to facilitate that. And it was then, because I was regularly, kept coming across this same, people saying how unusual it is, even, on a course like this, that at the end of it, everyone is really so deeply connected. And I realized that while I was facilitating these things, I wasn't necessarily explaining what I was doing or how I was doing it. And so that's what I'd like to share with you here. And if I was to kind of analyze it, I guess the kind of overarching thing that I would say is that, and I will correct what I've just said, is that it's not me managing it. It's me handing over the control of the love, the joy, the, and handing over to the participants the, what's the right word? Not permission, but the responsibility for taking care of each other. So the way I package my workshops is I say that my responsibility is to facilitate learning. The responsibility of the host is to host, and the responsibility of the participants is to make sure this is the most amazing, wonderful, learnful, most joyful, beautiful experience. And then I give them some tools to help them facilitate that. So I think if I was to summarize it, that's how I would kind of put it. So all the responsibility is not on me. It's collectively on all of us to make this beautiful, joyful experience. So, all right, so to start breaking this down, if we start looking at how we do this, in fact, no, before we do that, we're all trainers in different contexts, so we've all faced similar problems. So maybe let's start. I'd love to hear from some of you to find out what are some of the biggest challenges that we may face as trainers. So whether it's a 2-day course or a 2-week course, there's some, obviously on longer courses, especially if it's residential, you have a whole series of other challenges. If it's short courses where people are just coming, during the day and leaving in the evening and not really socializing in the evening, there's, a different subset of challenges. So yeah, in fact, let's start with those short courses first. What are some of the challenges that we may face with short courses, i.e. non-residential courses? Over to you. So just put your hands up or just unmute. There's not so many of us, so feel free to just unmute. And yeah, what are some of the biggest challenges that we face? Frederick.
Yeah, thank you, Rakesh. Hello. It could be the time. It's in short course. The challenge is often to want to put many content in a few time, and it can create a kind of pressure and tensions, and don't create an harmonious environment.
Absolutely. So yeah, so quite often we've got so many things so much things to say, so many things in our head, so much we would love to impart on on the people who are in front of us, and yet time, when do we get time to deliver all of this? And so that, ultimately comes down to good planning. And I don't mean, I've seen many people literally make almost a minute by minute timetable. It's like, that's impossible. What, are you serious? Like, so, well, okay, we can look at how to address it, but me personally, I know what I want to deliver by the end of it. I have mind maps of what I want to get across, but I pick and choose and I weave and I change how I'm delivering it according to how people respond and how much time we have. But okay, yeah, so time is one big issue. What other issues, what other challenges do we have in short courses? What possible problems? What could go wrong on a course? What could possibly go wrong?
I could bring something here. Hi, everyone. Good to see all of you here. Thank you so much, Rakesh. I feel like engagement not only among each other because of a weekend, because recently, the last few years, we experienced it, even with Beatrice that is here, we experienced like online courses that are like weeks, months, and wow, so much intimacy and engagement happens. But how do you do this in a short period of time? And the engagement, I see in two ways. With each other at the moments that we are there, so we feel free to just like relax and bring all that we need to bring in, bring our doubts and questions, because I think that a good environment must propose that the person feels relaxed enough to bring her doubts, but also engagement with the training itself, with the movement itself, understanding. I don't know if the word is understanding, but knowing how to proceed, because it seems like when the time is short, they leave with more questions than with answers. So anyway, this is it. There's a lot more to say, but that's what counts. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks. Maybe one more challenge with a short course, then we'll look at longer courses. Anyone? Armandine or Beatrice or Roberto?
Yes, I can speak. Well, I've not been giving training on transition, but I've been on the circles and speaking with people on transition. And I think that today's, if I would give a train today or tomorrow, my biggest challenge will be first to integrate new people to the concept, and people that already have some background and want to actualize themselves in terms of transition. So it's like overlapping perspectives and knowledge on what is transition. So I think nowadays the most challenging will be kind of give some valuable training concerning that people nowadays have more knowledge. They are more aware of many tools, many perspectives, many ways to do transition. So I'm just comparing of what will be a trend today, comparing of how it was in the past. So is dealing with this lot of information, not in the moment, but the knowledge that people have more knowledge. So how can we co-create together to build something new or different, or like beyond what we already know, or something like this? Hope I could explain.
Yeah, so quite often, so one challenge which kind of is encompassed partly in what you said is you will always find there's people coming to your course, some of whom have so much knowledge already, and some of whom know nothing. And how do you integrate them? How do you make? I remember doing a course as a children in permaculture course, and 3 of the people who were coming on the course out of 15 had so much experience working with children, and my co-teacher was like, "Oh my goodness, what? How? They've got like 60 years more experience than we have doing this. What is it that we can tell them?" And I just said, "Relax. It's going to be cool. It's going to be fine." And in the end, these 3 people were probably the most excited at the end of it. They were like, "Oh my, if only I'd known this 40 years ago. Wow, I could have." And they were. So it's about your confidence. It's about knowing what you have to do, and it's about integrating people with their skills. So so one thing for me is I don't consider myself a teacher. I consider myself a facilitator of learning. So I'm there to facilitate learning. If someone comes into the room with far more experience than me, it would be really dumb of me to say, "Hey, I'm going to teach you something." No, let's get you to be part of the actual teaching process. And I remember another workshop that I actually went on where there was something like, I think maybe 40 of us, something like that. It was huge. It was an eco-village design education course, and on the first day, there were so many amazing people, really so many amazing people from around the world with so much skills that the facilitator said, "Wow, we are really intimidated by you." Like, what? Did I really hear that? So yeah, we're intimidated because you've got so much experience. And this really set the pace for the rest of the event, of where they were always kind of trying to one-upmanship and trying to push those of us who had knowledge down. And it was a really wonderful course from the perspective of how not to run a course. I learned so much about what not to do on a workshop from that month. And yeah, and there's probably quite a few people in this network who were actually there, who probably remember that workshop very well. So yeah, so it's about your attitude, and it's about, you know, really enriching, encouraging, and facilitating, connecting, and as you say, co-creating, and being really flexible in how you deliver things, so that you can really bring, you know, the knowledge, the amazing experiences that everyone has into the workshop, and allow that to actually even guide, you know, what you do, and really evolve the workshop every day. Amazing, beautiful. So okay, so what are some of the biggest challenges of longer courses, 2-week courses, for example, residentials especially? What are some of the things that could go wrong? And I'd love to hear maybe from Beatrice and Roberto and Don.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Don. Rakesh, nice to see you again. Saida, Roberto. Yeah, I think in the long course, it's a big challenge to keep, like, to hold the energy during a long period of time. So many times we have like a big amount of people subscribe and starting the process, but in the end, the energy decreased and many people gave up in the process. So it's like quite challenge to hold the energy and to hold the people alive in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And as I just say, in the long process, you get like a deeper connection, like a long, deep connection. But also in the end, like something disappear. Not always, but I would like to know how we can keep the energy and how can keep the social cohesion.
Roberto just
Roberto left. Oh, there, his internet maybe fell down. Yeah, so yeah, how we can create a strategy to really hold the energy and hold the global family that we are able to create during the course, to really hold the effort and be sure that the people don't feel alone after the training, which is so common. Okay, now I have more knowledge, I have more skills, I have more information, and what I can do? Like, well, no. This is like a common feeling in many participants, and in myself as trainer also is a common challenge that I face on. Check.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Don, anything you'd like to contribute?
Well, I've mostly only taught 1 or 2 day in-person courses. I've done longer courses online, but I think what's kept me from doing longer courses, because I would love to, is that it just requires a lot. It requires a large commitment on terms from participants, you know, to be able to take that time off, to you know, pay what is needed to fairly compensate instructors and pay for the venue and the lodging and the food and all of that. That might be a little bit beyond the scope of this webinar, but yeah, I'd love to find ways to do more longer in-person courses, because I think they are deeply transformative. I know when I took my permaculture design course, I did it residential, 10 days, and that was a really profound experience.
Wonderful. So I used to do I need to be careful what I say, especially given this is recorded. But I've never been until very, very recently an official transition town trainer. And this has been quite a tension for me, to tell you the truth. And so I used to basically set up transition towns and do something that was like a transition town training, but without calling it a transition town training course. And it used to be over 9 days, where I would first start with, teaching things like sociocracy, and then we'd get a common vision of what we wanted from the transition town or from a project. And then I would start going through various different things, including how to set up a transition town, and we'd actually set it up. We would create the vision, mission, and aims. We'd create the ideas, and we'd pretty much day by day just build up how to actually make the transition town really function well. And so it's not just about giving people tools, but it's about them actually experiencing the tools, using the tools, and setting it up, and even getting to the point of putting things into practice. So we'd have a day of some kind of hands-on as well throughout these. So yes, people get, and we'd often do a site visit as well. So yes, I've done very long transition town courses as well, but as I say, that was before I was officially a transition town trainer. In fact, when I do my permaculture courses, I have one day which is about urban permaculture and livelihoods, where I explain what transition town is. We look at lots of urban issues, and then we start looking for solutions, and then I present transition town as a solution, and we mimic setting up a theoretical transition town during the actual permaculture course, and at the end of it then say, well, and people are like, wow, this is amazing, let's just do it. Okay, yeah, let's just do it then. And so I've set up many transition towns because of this. As I say, even though it's not an official transition town course, because for me it's a really beautiful, a really neat solution to many problems. So, and so it's something I'm really passionate to share. So knowing that, so okay, some of the other challenges of living together and working together, learning together is things like if we don't know why people are there, how do we as facilitators of learning know that what we are delivering is what people want? If we don't know who they are, don't know what they want, if we haven't got an agreement with them, then we're just delivering stuff that we think you want, and think is going to make your heart sing. And for me, this doesn't work. I need to find out what people want. But what you find quite often is when people share what they want at the beginning, before, so I don't know, are people familiar with the forming, storming, norming, performing pattern? Yeah, one nod. Okay, maybe we can look at that then. But this pattern shows us that when people first come together, they very often say what they, because we want to be part of, we're pack animals. So as a pack animal, we want to be part of the pack. We don't want to be left aside, because being alone is, there's security in numbers, so it's quite lonely, it's quite dangerous. It's, we're not supported if we're on our own. So we want to be part of the pack. So in order to become part of the pack, quite often we say what we think the pack wants to hear. It's not necessarily what's in our heart to say. So when we first ask people, we'll get an impression, but it's not necessarily the full truth. So again, so when we want to be doing this work, we need to find out what people want, but know that this will change as the workshop goes along. And so we'll look at how to handle that. Also, if we don't know what people want, even, the first instance of what people want, as we start moving, we could be moving in completely the wrong direction, or people could be making assumptions of what they want from your workshop that may not be actually realistic, or what you are even skilled in delivering. So before we start anything, the first thing we do, and I think what I'd like to do, what I'd like to do is I'd like to go through how I deliver a 2-week course as a pattern. And then later on in the session, we'll then break into smaller groups and start thinking, how is it that we can extrapolate what I do in a 2-week course to make that appropriate for a 2-day course? Because obviously what we do in a 2-week course is going to be very different to a 2-day course. So as I say, so at the beginning, the first thing we really need to do is create a common vision. And so pretty much the first day of my long courses is always about us finding a common vision. So the way in which I do this is I get people to share, imagine this course has happened. Imagine you've gone through this course and you go back into the world and your friend asks you what happened? What did you do? And you're like so excited, like, oh my, wow, we did this and we did that. And it's like, wow, and this was great. And now I can do this. And now okay, so what would it take? What needs to happen during these 2 weeks to make you that passionate, to make you feel so, wow, this is the most amazing 2 weeks. I learned so much. We did so many, let's break it down. Let's start thinking. So I'll facilitate some kind of way in which people can get into that frame of mind. And there's several ways you can do that, through visioning, through, individuals talking to each other, pair work, whatever. There's various facilitation strategies we can use, but ultimately you want to catch that excitement, that buzz, that passion. And once you've caught that passion, you then extrapolate the essence of what people are trying to get to as they're expressing that. And you capture all of that. And then once you've heard from everybody, you can then extrapolate from all these collective passions a sentence that is like a vision. So, for example, quite often I'll come up with a sentence, something like, if it's a permaculture course, something along the lines of, we are a temporary community looking to learn and embody permaculture, learn and embody permaculture together. Something like that. It's a quick vision. So we're here together to learn permaculture and embody it, really absorb it, really take it in, really embody permaculture together. That's the key word. So whatever sentence we come up with as a common vision, we start with that. Now, the reason for this, you may think, yeah, but I've already put the promotion out there. They know what the workshop is. So surely everyone's coming because of that. But you'll be surprised how, without having and really stating really nice and clearly what your vision is, some people may, and without people really thinking it through, people may come into your course with some assumptions of what's going to happen. So, for example, a lot of my courses, because of my ethics, are always vegan. So it's doing things, so if someone comes to my workshop thinking that they're going to learn how to manipulate and kill chickens, sorry, you're not going to learn that on my course. At the same time, I'm not going to ram down and be evangelical about why you must be vegan. That's also absolutely not. And some people come to the course expecting me to tell them why veganism is the only way possible that you should live, and everyone else who isn't vegan is clearly wrong. And no, I'm not. Sorry, I'm not going to do that. I'm not here to push any agenda. I'm just, this is how I am. This is who I am. This is how I live. And this is what I'd like to share. And so having that common vision at the beginning is really important. When it comes to sociocracy, the reason why this really is essential is we recognize that if we allow people to have assumptions of what we are doing and where we are going, invariably, when people try to solve problems and make proposals, because the end goal that everyone has is different, the actual solution that they have is going to be different, and people might not be able to work out why there's so much disparity in the solution. So an example of this would be, imagine if we say, yeah, let's go out for a meal. Let's go out, you know, that place we went to last time. And one person remembers something that's literally just 2 minutes walk away. Another person remembers, that place, yeah, that was about, you know, it's about an hour by car or something. Another person remembers another place that's even further away, that, you know, is a train drive away or something, train ride. And so when we start trying to find solutions, well, how do we get there? Someone says, let's walk. Walk? You're crazy. It can take an hour by car. How are we going to walk? That's going to take like 2 days to walk there. You're mad. No way. No, we need to take a train. A train? Why would you want to take a train? It's like 2 minutes walk. Why? You know, because we've all solving the problem correctly because we have different end goals. Yeah, we've got different end goals, so we're all solving it. Yeah, if it's the place 2 minutes around the corner, 2 minutes walk, we can walk there. If it's somewhere much further away, then okay, we need to take a train or a car or whatever. But if we don't have the clarity of where we're trying to get to, then it's really obvious as to why, you know, someone's trying to pull us in this direction, someone's trying to pull us in that direction, and there will always be tension. So the first thing is really to be really clear on what the vision is. And so in a course, we set up the vision. We then set up a mission, and the mission is how we will go about delivering the actual workshop. And so it could be, you know, that we do 80 hours of teaching at, you know, maybe whatever, 7 hours a day or something, you know, and we have X amount of time for lunch. We have, you know, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to, you know, run various courses over X amount of days, and we make sure that people have opportunities to ask questions. We make sure, you know, so we set up however it is we're going to deliver the course, you know, that's the mission. And invariably, well, sometimes I actually create mission aims statements as well, which is more very, very detailed, very, you know, if we want to get feedback on it, it's really important to actually have some SMART objectives as well. So depending on the course, maybe I will or maybe I won't actually have SMART objectives, you know, that yeah, and some of the stuff I said before, if we're having objectives, I would bring into here. So it would be like, yeah, we will do, you know, and basically it's like the timetable. So we will start at this time, we will end at that time, we will have this amount of hours of content, and this is how it will run. We will make sure that, you know, everyone's voices are heard and so on and so forth. So that's one aspect of it, setting a nice clear pattern so people have in their minds exactly what to expect from the course. But that is created by all of us. So we co-create that. You know, during a long course, we learn Sociocracy, we co-create the vision, mission, and aims. So that it's really come from us. We really deeply understand it because we created it rather than it being imposed on us. So that's one thing. The other thing that I do is I then create a culture. You know, so what is the culture of how we behave towards each other during the course? And as part of this culture, you know, this is where we really look more deeply at how is it that we really care for each other. So what are the things that could, so we try to identify what are the things that could lead to tension? What are the things that could lead to, you know, people starting to get upset, and how do we mitigate for it? What kind of things could we do? So I don't know, for example, if I'm using words that people don't understand and they don't understand the language, whether it's because, you know, English isn't their first language or whether it's because it's a technical word. If people don't express, hey, I don't understand that, I don't know that they haven't picked it up, and therefore I can't help to correct it. So let's create a culture around if there is a language issue, if there's a word you don't understand, especially if it means that you do not understand the whole context of the subject. If it's really getting in your way and you really need to understand that word, then let's make a hand signal, and let's make sure that we address that before, you know, before it gets too late and you've missed the actual point. So we set up a culture around, you know, feeling free to ask questions. We create a culture to make sure that we, you know, so if you don't understand something, ask questions. If you don't understand something because of language, again, you know, really that's an urgent, let's stop, let's address that immediately. Maybe there's some culture around the food, how we cook, who cooks, how, you know, what kind of food we make, and maybe there's a culture around sharing, you know, maybe there's a culture around yeah, privacy and intimacy and, you know, respect for each other, whatever we feel is necessary. So we create a whole series of cultures that we as a group co-create. And I'll come back onto at the end of the session, if we have time, is I'll actually show you how, because one of the big challenges of creating a culture, you know, many people make agreements of what they're going to do and how they're going to behave. But what happens if people don't behave? What happens if people just forget or just do not behave that way? How do we address that? And so what I do is I create what I call a culture board, and we will have a look at this at the end of today. And it's kind of very similar to a Kanban. Are people familiar with Kanbans? How Kanban process works? It's kind of, I've kind of borrowed and I've kind of stolen the idea, or I've reinterpreted that idea of, you know, having these columns of, you know, of where a subject sits. So if we have a culture, so for example, okay, I've got one here, which is like a mealtime ritual. So for whatever, in order to connect to each other, in order to give thanks and be grateful for whatever, you know, for the people who've cooked it, for the people who grew the food, for whoever, just have some kind of a ritual around food growing. And I don't know, let's pick another one, just random. Oh, another ritual, just by luck. Some kind of a ritual that we have at the start of each session. So before we start a session, let's get everyone concentrated. And so typically my most common starting ritual is a moment of silence. So, you know, as people come into the room and they're really they're busy talking, you know, and you want to start the session, and you know, and you start talking, and everyone's still chatting away, and it's like, come on. So, okay, let's have a moment of silence. And everyone can just breathe for a moment and just be present. And then I can start in a nice, calm way. So some kind of starting ritual. So we've got all kinds of different bits, elements that I consider to be culture. Again, I can share most of these with you at the end. And we all agree on them, you know. So maybe we have hand signals, maybe we have all kinds of different things in our culture. And what we do every 2 or 3 days is I have a culture board where these all start off in a different place. So they start off like this is not active. So in fact, the most common way I do it is using like plants. So at the beginning, these are all a seed. You know, they all have potential to be a culture, but they're a seed. They haven't germinated yet. Then the next column along would be sprouting. So if we're just starting to, yeah, we're starting to do the rituals, you know, it's not always happening, but it's kind of happening. We're starting to do it. Then we move it into the next column to say this is sprouting. If we feel that, you know, we've gone beyond sprouting and now it's leafing, it's like, yeah, we're getting quite good at this. It goes into the next column. And if it's like, wow, it's now flowering, yeah, we're getting really good at this. It's really, you know, it's going through the hardest moment of its life. It's really, really fulfilling. And then it's fruited, you know, it's actually so. And I invite people to say where they feel each part of the culture is. And in particular, I invite people to put it at the lowest point that they feel it is. So if someone moves it this side and you think, no, 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 for me, it's here, I move it back here. And this is where it needs to be. Just because 90% of people feel it's there, one person thinks, no, it's further back here or even further behind. It's important to capture that, because if that one person has a problem, if their hearts are not singing, we need to know about it so we can then do something about it. So this is how the culture board works. So say we'll draw one out and we'll actually make use of it so you can see it in full later. But okay, so yeah, so we start the course with a common vision. So everyone as an individual expresses what they need, what's really going to make their hearts sing. We create a vision from that, a mission statement, and maybe some aims. Then we create a culture. So how is it that we behave towards each other? What is it that we do? And yeah, and then, as I say, then we're kind of ready to really start the group. But equally, we need to think about some other challenges, such as so again, the way such as cooking and, you know, sleeping and all the other logistical arrangements, as well as, you know, the how to arrive on time. You know, so maybe one of the cultures is that we arrive with 2 minutes before the session actually starts, so we're all ready to actually start the learning, and that the session starts when on time, not waiting for anybody. You know, maybe this is part of the culture that we agree we're going to deliver. So yeah, so once we have that vision and that culture, we're kind of, we then need to think about some of the other logistics, as I say, eating and sleeping. So the way in which I actually organize my workshops, and this is how I actually make my courses very affordable, is I split the actual costing of the course in 3 ways. So one cost is the accommodation, and what I say is I try to get the accommodation as cheap as possible by inviting, you know, finding a venue and say, right, if you make the course, the accommodation absolutely free, I will give you 5 places on the course in exchange. So if students don't have to pay anything because you're off grid, you're getting all your own water, you're getting your own electricity, you don't need anything, and you value the course more than you value the money, and you don't need, great, I'll give you 5 places. If you do it at cost price, fantastic, then I'll give you 3 places on the course in exchange. If you need to make money, and that's perfectly okay, then and you do it, you know, a reasonable amount over the actual what your cost price is, that's no problem, then I'll only give you 2 places. If you want to make lots of money from this and charge a really big heavy fee, then I give you no places on the course. And surprise, surprise, almost anyone who ever tries that, the course is never run because they're just not affordable and it just doesn't happen. So invariably, I make the courses very, very affordable for accommodation by doing exchanges. So obviously I lose out because I don't get the money for the training, for the you know, for training these extra 3, 4, 5 people, but that's fine. But I make it accessible to people. So then the next part is I say, yeah, and then you give me whatever you feel is fair and affordable to you. So there's no fixed fee, but hey, here's a range, here's maybe a minimum, here's an average, here's, yeah, if you can really afford it, it would be great if you gave this. But hey, if you can't afford the minimum, get in touch with me and let's work something out. Yeah, the last thing I ever want to hear is that someone says, I would love to have done it, but I couldn't afford to do that course. So, so that's the next thing I do. The third thing I do is then the food. And as I say, so the hosts, just to go back, the host manage all of the accommodation fee. I don't ever take any money for the accommodation. They pay the host directly. I don't need to see it, which means that if someone says, hey, you're my friend, you don't need to pay, no problem, just come for free. He doesn't have to ask me. They don't need to ask me for permission for anything. That's your business. Everyone gives me the money directly for the teaching. And the third part is the food. And I say, right, the host, I facilitate learning. You, as students, facilitate and make sure this is the most amazing, wonderful, beautiful course there ever is. And it's your responsibility to take care of each other, which includes the food. So because we start with Sociocracy, I then get them to start using Sociocracy to decide how are they going to cover the costs of the food. Who's going to buy it? What kind of food do we get? Where do we buy it from? And so on and so forth. And obviously, you need, this doesn't happen overnight and, from day one. So you invite everyone, hey, bring as much food as you can to share day one. When you arrive, just bring as much as you can. And so we've got at least 3, 4, 5 days worth of food. And then we start using Sociocracy. We get the people into the groups to start communicating, to start, working out how they Typically, I get them to, or we co-create a process where we have about 4 or 5 people who really understand how to cook for many people, who can be kind of what we call foodies. So so these people, they communicate with everyone else and they work out how, what kind of food they want, and they start putting the processes together. They work out, well, where can we get food from? What kind of food do we get? Where do and they also cook it. Maybe there's one step I could have explained before then is in order to take care of people's needs, quite often, if you're in a big group, 20, 30 people, quite often the shyer people, the people who perhaps need a little bit more support and taking care of, they will not necessarily express themselves in a big group. So what we do is we get into groups, which we call guilds. And these guilds remain as a distinct group of 4 to 5 people at the most throughout the whole duration of the course. Now, what they do is we identify some of the challenges that we might face during the course, and and so they do several things. So at the end of each day, they have 45 minutes with each other, and during this 45 minutes, they can do whatever they like. But I invite them to think about all the things that they really enjoyed. What is it they learned? What are the things they didn't understand? Is there something that I just did not get and I need some help with this? It's really important to identify that. But also, this is a time where you can share what's in your heart. If there's any tension, if there's anything that's, if someone upset you, if you didn't understand the content well enough, if the language wasn't good enough, or maybe you're not sleeping well because someone's playing music till 4 o'clock in the morning in the tent next to you or something, whatever. If there's something that's not making your heart sing, if something is getting in the way, we collectively need to hear about it. Now, if the guild can solve the problem, fantastic. Yeah, I can't sleep because the ground is too hard, or I don't have a pillow, or I need an extra blanket, I'm cold. All right, yeah, I've got an extra blanket. There you go, solved. But if it is something that the bigger group needs to resolve, then the next day it comes back to the bigger group, or when they feed back, it comes to the bigger group and we collectively solve it. Hey, if you can't sleep because someone's playing music right next to your tent, hey, let's create a culture policy around loud music and talking and all the rest of it, especially when people are sleeping. So the guilds take care of each other emotionally, physically. I teach them all kinds of tools for how to really bond and how to really connect, how to listen to each other, how to really hear each other's needs and how to respond in a way that really shows that you care for each other. I give them, and as well as that time, they also do chores and activities together. So one guild, for example, will cook for the whole day. They will make breakfast, they'll make lunch, they'll make dinner. While another guild is their responsibility may be cleaning, cleaning pots and pans, cleaning spaces. A third guild, their responsibility might be to go and get the firewood, to go and collect the water from the well, the drinking water, or whatever tasks are necessary. Maybe another guild could be the heart keepers. If there's a tension or something and people notice something and something needs to change, it's your responsibility to kind of bring this and address this and see how we can solve these problems. So in this way, the groups, the guilds, as I say, take care of each other, and as I say, and they also they all cook, and as I say, so there's one person in each guild who is what we call a foodie. So in other words, this foodie is the person who really knows how to cook for everyone, who knows how to cook for 20, 30 people, but they're also responsible for the funding of it, the finance. So they find out from their team, well, what are you allergic to? What is it you can eat? What is it you can't eat? And they find out what kind of foods should we be buying? Should it be all ecological? Should it all be local? What's more important? Should it be, should we avoid buying things in packets? And, and in this way, we find out what the group collectively wants. These foodies come together, they then make a policy. How are we actually going to fund this? Where are we going to get the money from to pay for this? And knowing that some people may have bought £50 or €50 worth of food with them and someone else may have bought nothing. How do we balance that out? So remember day one, we invite people on day one to bring as much food as they can. Some people can't because they're traveling very long distances. They have a tent and everything else on their back. They don't know the local area, and so they arrive with nothing. That's perfectly fine. Others, they're relatively local, or they came by car, so they could pack their car out. Fantastic. Or they could, maybe it's also about money. Maybe they couldn't afford it, and while others could. So everyone arrives with a different amount. So how do you balance that out? So again, we use sociocracy to start seeing how can we, balance that equation. So what they do is, in most cases, they work out how much would it cost, how much do we think it will cost us to feed everyone for the 2 weeks. Let's break that down to the first week. Let's collect money for the first week. So if we divide that number by the number of people on the course, and then they also decide, does Rakesh pay for this, or do we cover Rakesh's food costs? Whatever they agree, that's what we go with. If they want me to contribute, no problem, I contribute. They say, no, you're contributing enough, fine, no problem. And then they say, right, so each person we estimate needs to give about £40 or €40 for the first week. And we then have a magic hat. We say, right, we're not going to follow this up and make sure that everyone pays exactly the same amount. It's now down to trust, because we recognize that some people can afford more, some people can't afford as much, and we don't want to embarrass anyone. We don't want anyone to feel like they're not, feel uncomfortable. So here's a magic hat. Here's a list of all the names. When you put something in, whatever you want to contribute in, tick your name off. So we know everyone has contributed. Then we know how much money we have in the pot. And then we use the money. And, so some person, as say, may have already bought £50 worth of stuff. So yeah, no need to put any more in. Someone else, So once we know how much we have, then the foodies can then use that to go and buy food for the rest of the time. And doing it this way, what we find is very often the amount that they think that they needed for 1 week almost covers everyone to the end of the second week. Because of buying stuff in bulk, buying stuff this way, really. And so maybe towards the end of the, halfway through, we realize, maybe we need some more fresh vegetables, we need this, we need that. So maybe everyone contributes just another 5, 10 euros each or something. But again, all of this is managed by the students. That's the important thing. So you give them complete, total responsibility. You give them responsibility for, as say, food, for eating, for for sleeping, for ensuring that everyone's hearts are singing. So it's their responsibility to find out when something is not working well. Obviously, you as a facilitator, you can look and watch and observe and check yourself, but ultimately, you make, well, the way I do it anyway, is I make sure that I give them the full responsibility, and I give them tools for how to solve problems. So yeah, so how am I doing for time, by the way, in terms of where we're at for the process?
Yeah, we were planning on taking a break right about now, but feel free to take whatever time you want to wrap.
Okay, so I'll just wrap up my process, and then we'll take a break, and then, as I say, we'll see how do we take this idea, this principle, and apply it to shorter courses. And maybe I'll just touch a little bit extra also on a few extra things on sociocracy that we might need to know. So yeah, so basically, as I say, the students take full responsibility for the well-being of everyone else in the group. But I give them the tools, I give them sociocracy. So we have a very clear vision of what we want to do. What's important with sociocracy is once you've made that vision, it's not set in stone. And what we can do is we can then, after maybe 4 or 5 days, is we look at it again. We look back at the vision and say, hey, this is what we thought we wanted. Does this still make our hearts sing to actually fulfill this vision? If it does, great, we can extend it for a little bit longer. If it doesn't, there's something, we realize there's something missing, then hey, let's change it. Let's alter it. And so every day, what I do is I have 15 minutes of sociocracy in the morning, 15 minutes of sociocracy at the end of each day. And this is mainly used for people to feed back any challenges, any issues that are coming up, and for us to solve those problems. And it could be, hey, look, this problem may take a while to solve. So who is interested in solving this? Who is passionate enough to spend some time? And when do you have time to do it? When are you going to, because it's going to be too long for this 15 minutes. So who's passionate? Right, go away and come back maybe, at the end of the day, or do it during your lunch break. Or invariably what I do with the lunch break is I have 1 hour for preparing lunch, 1 hour for eating lunch, and then maybe half an hour for people just to relax, or they can come to an extra additional session because I've got so much I'd love to share with you. And if you have the time and the energy and you want to hear that just a little extra, but if you just really need to go and zonk out, fine, you've got that time. This is optional. This is not mandatory stuff. This is just whatever extra things we would love to share. So people have 2.5 hours in which they can potentially do some of these, answer some of these questions and create proposals and so on and so forth. So another important point of sociocracy is if a decision affects an individual, that person must be given the opportunity to participate in creating and consenting to the proposal. Now, each person can choose whether they do that, take that opportunity or not, but they must be given the opportunity. So if it's something about the course, then invariably it's going to affect everybody. So that's why we have it 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at the end of the day, these kind of sociocratic processes where if there's a tension, all right, let's share it. Can we solve this problem? Does someone have a proposal right now where we can solve it? If not, if it's going to take time, let's put it aside and we'll, whoever wants to talk about it, talks about it in the breaks and in lunchtime, and we come back to it whenever it is a well formulated proposal. And in this way, we keep fine-tuning and tweaking how the course works and how people interact with each other. So I think, yeah, I think that's maybe enough. There's tons and tons and tons and tons and tons more I could probably say, but I think that's a basic pattern. It's, you know, and if I was to summarize it, it would be about, it's about us co-creating and co-facilitating an amazing experience. So we find out from people what they want, we give them tools for how to solve problems, we get them to take the responsibility to express when something isn't working, we get them to work out how to solve it, and we co-create this constant fine-tuning, fine-tuning, fine-tuning. Because if someone's heart's not singing, you know, we have a kind of philosophy as well, that if we don't all get there together, none of us have arrived. Yeah, we're on a journey. If we don't all get to the end destination together, none of us have arrived. So what does it take to keep us working together, to keep us, and this say comes from continuous feedback, continuous feedback, continuous feedback, and from people's ability and confidence to express themselves. And I say, if they can't express it in a big group, express it in a small group. The small group then brings it to the bigger group without having to mention names, etc. So yeah, so that's kind of my process. We take a break now, and then questions and answers at the end, or questions and answers now?
Let's take a break now, and then maybe we can do a little bit of question and answer when we get back. You've given us a lot of ideas and thinking about, yeah, how we can use them in our own courses. So I think that's what we'll be talking about when we return.
Indeed. Okay.
Yes, I just share on the chat that I will go to another meeting because Rakesh already shared us this teaching when he was in Toulouse. So it's a good to remember. And I didn't know that it was about the same subject approximately. So thank you very much. And I have another meeting, so I will prioritize the other meeting after the break.
Lots of love.
Thank you. See you
everyone in
soon.
France.
Thanks.
Okay,
Bye
take
bye.
care.
Bye Amandine. Bye Zaida. See you soon.
Okay.
And for the rest of us who are staying on, let's come back about 18 past the hour. We're at 8 right now. And in the meantime, you can enjoy some beautiful reggae music that Rakesh has curated for us. So see you in 10 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, welcome back. And yeah, I think we're gonna talk a little bit about how we can apply this, all the good information that Rakesh has given us to our own courses, and maybe if there's some questions out there.
Could we start with the question?
Yeah, so it'd be good to hear from you what's coming up, yeah, if there's anything you didn't understand or anything that you'd want me to go into more detail on, or yeah, or if there's a particular challenge that you have in one of your courses that you'd like us to think about.
Just to give a context, I'm very excited to hear all your presentation, because I did experience all of this in my permaculture trainings or whatever other trainings with that kind of feel. But I have to confess that anytime it comes to transition training, we tend to go the other way, like thinking that it needs to be more structured, that we cannot take people and just make them be a part of cooking, be a part of, it's just a concept that I never thought of it so much. I actually started when I was in the United States, and then was even more structured because of the culture, you know. But even by being in Brazil, I feel like there's this idea of like, okay, who is going to deliver the food? Who is going to, and then when you're talking about, it's just like my brain just opened up. a lot. My question is, I don't know if it's a question, but a comment that I'd like to hear from you. When you go to a permaculture course, you get more permaculture people that are more into the same mission. But when you go to a transition course, you may get people that are not so much into all these aspects, and just trying to understand if it makes sense, which for me totally makes sense, but how to engage people that are not so much into the roots of, of doing all of this. But it's a training for them. But is there any specifics that we embrace people that are more formal or coming from a business? Because we gave some online trainings for people that were coming from multinational corporations, but they have an eye on sustainability or something like that. So just to hear a little bit of that.
Sure. So I've done trainings for all kinds of different places, but and I guess one of to kind of go back to some of the things you were bringing up, for me, it really is about us all dancing together, and it's about us coming together and finding our rhythm and really dancing and really, but feeling at home. So everyone comes with different ideas of what they should and shouldn't be doing, and different on my courses I'm really lucky. I'm really lucky because of how I am. I attract a really wide variety of people. As you probably can appreciate, in most of Europe, most of the teachers are white males teaching things like permaculture and transition towns and all this kind of stuff. And so many people come because I am not white male, and they will actually say, I'm here because of who you are. Quite often they say, yeah, I read that you're a reggae DJ. That's why I'm here, and so I get a lot of people from the LGBTQ, family. I get a lot of people from all kinds of age groups, from 16-year-olds to 80-year-olds. I get from people who are, most of their lives they've been bankers and stock exchange and doing really intensive, really kind of work. I get people who've never worked. I get people who are really super rich. I get people all on the same course, and it's about how do we figure out a way that we can all dance together? How do we find that rhythm, that tune that allows us to all come together? And it takes time, in some places, some countries, because of cultural because of how they're brought up, for example, one place, and I've had to do this 2-3 times, and the first time it really, I was really like, wow, what's going on here? Is a lot of how I teach is not by actually teaching, but it's about asking questions and getting people to work things out for themselves. So I'll kind of paint a picture and then ask people questions. Well, what would you do in this situation? How would you solve that? What do you think this looks like? What do you imagine that is? And even though the question itself is carefully constructed, what do you think? It's not what is the truth. What is a fact? I'm saying, what do you think this means? What do you think? And so even though I frame the question very carefully, in one particular country, no one would ever answer. No one would ever answer. So what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What's your opinion on this? How do you feel about that? And for 3 days, no one would ever answer a question. And I began to start realizing it's part of their culture, because in their culture, when they're taught, they are just taught and blah, 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 blah. Remember this, remember that, fact, 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 fact. Remember, remember, remember. And then later on, then you have to sit back and work out, well, which bits of this information do I need to pass my exam? And then let's just learn those bits. So to actually have a lecturer, a professor who's actually asking you questions, it's like, what's going on here? This isn't how we learn. And so they're just not used to it. So it takes time. You have to work out a way in which you get them comfortable. So I start by getting them into pairs and say, right, have a conversation with your friend about this. And then come together in little groups of 4 and carry on that conversation, have it in a bigger group. And then one person from that group just feeds something back to me. And in this way, you slowly start getting them to talk, express themselves, slowly get them to start, feeding things back to you. And then by the end of the course, yeah, everyone's talking because you've got their confidence, you've got their, and they can see if someone says something that is, that someone may think is wrong, I don't ever criticize them. I don't put them down. I don't make them feel bad for saying something that wasn't exactly what I was thinking. But I encourage them and say, wow, that's a really good, I can understand why you come to that conclusion. Isn't that interesting? But have you thought about it from this perspective? What about if it was like that? What about, So no one's ever wrong in my course. No one's ever wrong. And yes, you just keep encouraging. So, yes, it's about finding these common patterns between people of what really starts to make their hearts sing. And so even if it is a really, someone from the absolute corporate world, there's a, they know exactly, this is exactly how you do things, they're still human beings. And at the end of the day, you can start talking to them at a human being level. And I think probably the thing that I do that breaks people the most, to soften them the most, sorry, break is the wrong word, that really softens people, gets them to take down their guard. Well, you need to think of what are the things, why is it that people behave this way? And what is it going to take to actually get them to change that pattern, to take their guard down, to take that, their self-defense mechanism down and actually reveal themselves. And singing is probably one of the most magical things you can do. Now, up to about, maybe 10 years ago, well, in the first 3-4 years of me teaching this kind of content, there's no way you would have got me to sing. No way. It's like, come on, that's foolish. That's, yeah. And, but the more I kind of started observing and seeing how it changes people, how it really impacts people, and it's actually, it was my self-defense mechanism of not wanting myself to look like a fool. That's why I wasn't doing it. And it was hard. But actually, the more I started singing in front of people, the more relaxed, and yeah, the more you can get people to do, even not just singing, but do silly things almost childlike things, childish things, to get adults to do childish things. The more you do that with each other, the softer, the more, this kind of childlike, cheeky kind of smiles start coming on people's faces, and you're like, oh yeah, you've been up to something. What have you been up to? And then and then you really, the joy starts coming out. So this trick with singing in particular is to always start with really easy songs, things that are really just a few really simple words, really simple beat, and everyone sings together. No one has to sing solo ever at the beginning. And then later on, after a few days, you can get them, maybe it's even the same song, but you get them to a point where people sing solo little bits of it, but now they're a little bit comfortable. And and then you congratulate them. You say, wow, I know what it was like for me. I would be absolutely so scared to have to do this. So for those of you who are like me, thank you so much for trusting us and singing in front of us. It was really beautiful. And you build it up, you make the songs more and more complicated, more complex, more, call and response, and maybe in what's that, where you synchronize, where one group starts and another group starts slightly off, I can't remember what that's called.
Rounds.
Yeah, exactly. And whatever, and you start building it up, and as say, and then I've actually invented a particular song that really makes people uncomfortable, because they have to say how beautiful they are. They have to tell the world, I am so beautiful. I am so wonderful. And and then everyone else says, yes, Amandine, you are so beautiful. You are so wonderful. And, you know, we go around and everyone has to say this. And then we reflect on it at the end. And how did it feel to say that? How did it feel for you to actually say? You know, some people are really, yeah, I'm so wonderful. They're really, others, it's really difficult. And we have to, as I say, we find out, well, why do you feel, why is it so? Who's telling you that you're not wonderful? Who's telling you you're not beautiful? What made you believe that? Hey, but we are telling you that you really are wonderful. You really are beautiful. And I say, then we really deeply analyze this and start, and you see week by week, you know, as people start, you really see people change. You know, the more they start singing this, the more they believe it, and the more they we keep reinforcing to each other how beautiful and how wonderful each of us are. You see people totally change. And so it doesn't matter, even if they're from the corporate world or if where they've come from, you know, everyone, we're all human, and we all have our survival strategies, and it's how we dismantle those survival strategies to to really get people to connect. So maybe that's a very long answer, but cool. So so seeing as there's such a small group, it doesn't really make sense to go into breakout rooms. How about I take a step back and I leave the floor to you, or I could even leave the room if you prefer. And you just have a conversation about, but for sure I'll take a step back, I won't contribute, is to think about all the patterns that I've shown you. This for me works in a long course, whether it's a permaculture course, whether it's a long transition town course, whether it's a community building experience, whether it's a holistic life design, where we're talking about health and well-being and medicine and that, you know, and we cover naturopathy, we include tantra, we include and then putting everything into a permaculture design. So it's a very, very specific course. People come with very different health challenges, but still it's about us still coming together as a community to, you know, so regardless of what the course is, I have a similar pattern of using the same kind of strategies for really building this deep connection. And especially if you understand the forming, storming, norming, performing, you know that the storm will come around day 5 is the day that, you know, and that's actually the really most beautiful part of the core of people coming together, because what's actually really happening at the storm is saying, hey, I've taken my mask off to, you know, I'm no longer pretending to be who I think you want me to be. I'm now going to show you who I really am. This is me. And if we start to learn how to love that person as opposed to the person who started the process with a mask on saying, this is, I'm pretending to be this because this is what's going to make you love me. You know, when we take the mask off, typically, oh, wow, that's not what I was expecting. What? And so this is where tension comes in. But if we truly learn how to love that person because this is who they really are, then magic happens. So this typically happens day 5. Day 4 or day 5 is when you have the storm where people feel so comfortable with each other that they can just be themselves and express themselves. And so if we learn how to deal with that, we're flying. And I can tell you lots of stories about that. But we're talking now about a 2-day course. We don't have time for that storm. We don't have time, you know, and to say when that storm happens, if we deal with it and we come back together so strong. And but we're a 2-day course. What, you know, so which aspects of what I've talked about really work and which aspects don't work? And how do we, and I start with one whole day of sociocracy. We've got a 2-day course. How are we going to deliver the rest of the content if one whole day is just sociocracy? It's not going to work. So how do we shorten it? How do we, take elements of this that we can learn and apply this to the shorter courses? So how long should we have for that, do you think?
Maybe about 10 minutes. I know you wanted to go over the culture board before we had to wrap.
Okay, so over to you, 10 minutes. So yeah, over to you. I'm shutting myself up. Amandine, why don't you start? How could you imagine applying what you've learned here to a 2-day workshop?
In fact, I'm more concerned because this reflection doesn't only depend on me, and I'm concerned about my Portuguese colleagues and trainers, which the older ones, the antique ones, I don't think they are active, so probably new ones need to come. But also the group in Portugal need to be more cohesive to co-create the training. So I did a lot of trainings in many other things in my life, including permaculture, farming, agriculture, all of this stuff, governance practices, etc. And also training, transition training. But it was some. So what I want to say is that I really feel that the conditions today are different, and to co-create these structures for Portuguese culture and situation at this moment need another type of work than what you were saying to us today. There is more logistics and also the contents and how to relate to people, and also to new subjectivities that are coming, something like that. So for me, my reflection is more that I need to do that with my team, and for the context of Portugal. But it is great. Yeah, I think you've been doing a lot of training without stopping in different contexts. So you bring a lot of richness on your experience. You really know a lot on the details that sometimes are the things that we don't know when we are not experienced organizing, etc. So yes, I think you have really a lot of wisdom. Maybe like a booklet on these logistics parts will be nice, something to read, or a fact sheet very with the main topics will be great from you, Rakesh, because you have the detailed experience that sometimes we miss. But yeah, if you ask the question to me, I need to be with my colleagues and reflect together with them. Yeah, but thank you.
Should we go on, Rakesh, by ourselves?
Carry on. I'm not going to respond to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to respond. I just wanted to, I'm so inspired to, because in Brazil, it's a lot easier. We have a tendency to go this way. Our trainings have been this way somehow. And the success of transition in Brazil has to do with that kind of celebration. It's almost like a celebration time. It is. I mean, it is. And it can be since the beginning. It's so interesting. It's like, I love the idea of creating the rituals because it gives like a pace, a rhythm to things. And so I really took note of everything you're saying. And when it comes to how to do this in a 2-day course, it seems to me that it's like starting building this confidence since the beginning. And first of all, like the trainers need to have it by themselves. They need to have among themselves. They need to be relaxed by themselves. They need to be like loose and fun and like not being afraid of it, because otherwise they will lock and then everybody will lock. I agree with Amandine that we know you are the magician that has that little, card from the hat at the moment that is needed. But I feel like more than talking about what kind of training, what I'm hearing is like how we can turn out to be humans. How can we turn out to be ourselves? And I think that this can happen even in Portugal. I'm just saying because we already related to all kinds of cultures together. And usually the cultures that are more serious or more the tendency to be more like formal, they are the ones that really love it at the end and jump and they do amazing things because they feel like they extrapolate because they feel like they're free. So I think that just come to me that if we do a 2-day is like doing what you said, but in a short time, maintaining a pace, maintaining the ritual idea of every moment, maintaining like an attention on making people feel at home since the first moment of arrival. Like we do usually in transition, that mapping thing that people just go to the center and like, okay, who takes showers once a day or stay here, or three times a day when it's too hot, and who never does this because of wastewater, goes to the other side. And just by that, and I realized now by your teachings that it's because we're not saying who is right or is wrong. We're just looking and saying, this is for us to see our differences. We have it all. And that in the beginning, like breaks everything. It's just amazing. So anyway, just that came to my mind as a possibility.
Beautiful. And it's not just about seeing what our differences is, it's also about what unites us, what is common between us. So,
Yes.
So that
Yes.
exercise I call, my variation of that is I call it step into my circle. So we all are standing in a circle. Then, hey, step into my circle if you, whatever, if you love reggae. And, you too. Oh, great.
It's stuck into my circle.
Yeah, step into my circle.
It's stuck into my circle.
So, so typically we try and find things that we are really passionate about. And what else are other people, who else is passionate about this? But then as we evolve it, maybe we then start asking, is there something that's so that you don't think there's anyone else crazy enough to like this or to have done this? Then start expressing that. And it's, what? You've also done that? Like, no way. And then, it's a conversation starter. So yeah, it's a really beautiful, experience. But it's true. Amandine, I've worked in so many different places with so many different cultures. And I think what I did learn from working in Portugal was about a certain amount of joyfulness and from the kind of the kind of Spanish and the kind of more Latin kind of, it's more about feelings and less about facts, but more about feelings and expressing your feelings and what have you, and how important that is to actually be able to get that out and understand each other from that perspective, as opposed to when you go to, and obviously I'm generalizing massively here, but when you go to the more northern countries, the more kind of Germanic and what have you, where it's more factual, it's more very, and so feelings don't often get expressed so easily, and so again, it's a different strategy you have to take to kind of break those borders. So sometimes with some people you can't stop them from expressing their, especially the Latins, you can't stop them from expressing their feelings. It's like, hang on, but we've only got half an hour, we have to hear from everyone. You've just taken 20 minutes to, so whereas others, it's like just very factual. And so again, everyone's coming from a different perspective, and but all of these different ways of seeing the world, expressing themselves is really important. And we have to recognize why one group has this survival strategy, another has a different survival strategy. But okay, where's the balance between? And how do we knowing that we all have these different ways of seeing the world and expressing ourselves, how is it that we still find this common ground to come together so that we can all dance together and sing the same tune? So wonderful. Yeah, anything, Don, anything that's coming up for you?
Yeah, I think this is all great. And yeah, I'm thinking about like how we do the launch training, how kind of the launch training has been designed. I think incorporates a lot of these different aspects. The specific tools may be different because of the time constraints, but there's a lot of good things in there. You know, taking time to really hear from everybody at the beginning and providing a warm welcome, forming group agreements together at the beginning to set culture, doing things like exercises from Joanna Macy's work that reconnects to get people kind of out of their comfort zone, out of just their heads. But having a nice diversity, having some presentations in there for people who really do want to get some information, but also having things like open space where people can bring, you know, what they're passionate about and have conversations around that and building that into the structure. Having things like a bike rack. And coming back at the end and often doing something like called Transition Clinic. I think that came from Tina Clark, where, you know, people are asking their really toughest questions. You know, so we make sure that we deal with kind of the real challenges that people are facing. And help to, you know, draw from the collective wisdom of the group to shed some light on those challenges. So I think there's a lot of really great stuff. I mean, one thing that I thought of that sometimes I don't do, and sometimes it's difficult to do because oftentimes people wait to the last minute to sign up for these courses. I don't know if that's the same everywhere, but I imagine it probably is to, you know, take advantage of preparation time for people to kind of get to know each other, to ask about their needs, to survey what they really want, or if there's something that they can contribute, or they'd like to contribute to the training. That helps to kind of expand the time a little bit more and be able to prepare to meet everybody's different needs. And I thought, you know, another great thing to do would be, you know, we probably don't have the time to, you know, discuss where we're going to shop for food and things like that in a 2-day course, but to have people bring a potluck one of the days, if most people are local, and kind of maybe describe like where they got their things from as a yeah, both as a manifestation of transition and action. You know, how do we put our values into our food, and how do we communicate our culture through our food? And I think that could be a good way to get people kind of more actively involved as well. So yeah, sure, I'll be thinking about this stuff for quite a while.
Right. Yeah, that especially for longer courses, permaculture courses, residential courses, that's what I always used to do. But as you say, now, especially since COVID, people really are signing up at the very, very, very last minute. Whereas before, normally a month before the course, is I'll organize a Zoom call or whatever. So, you know, I may not even be in the same country, but hey, let's just talk to each other. So maybe I'll offer 2 or 3 of these. Let's get to know each other, and let's get to start meeting each other and sharing ideas and what have you. And then, hey, can we help each other to get there together? You know, can we share lifts? And and so on and so forth. And so that people start really connecting with each other before they've arrived. And it's really makes a really lovely difference. It's really, yeah, really wonderful. And yeah, in terms of, I was thinking, you know, going back to some of the previous, I teach people how to teach permaculture as well. And probably there's two really important things that I try to impress upon people. One is to find your style, to be who you are, and to speak from your knowledge, from your passion. So I do an exercise where I get people to, okay, the story of your name. So everyone, I don't give them any preparation time whatsoever, just right in a circle, right, you've got 30 seconds to tell me the story of your name. And they just, whatever comes out. And then we say, well, what was that like? Wow, that was fascinating. And why was it so interesting? Why, what, you know, whereas, you know, sometimes when people present things, especially if they've written it down, it's really kind of dry and monosyllabic, and it's really obvious when someone is reading something and all right, well, and I did a training course very recently, you know, with Extinction Rebellion, and pretty much everyone was reading from scripts, and it was so, I couldn't connect to it. I don't connect to words, I connect to their heart, I connect to how people say things, which is why translations also really don't work for me, which is why I don't go to many of the transition projects that Inner Being, because they're all translated. The translator may be great, but there's no feeling in how they're saying it. And so I lose that. So I don't actually understand half of what's going on. And yeah, so when people express themselves because they're passionate, that's what comes across. And so to teach in using stories about things you have experienced and things you do know about. Don't teach things you don't know about. Don't be a YouTube, you know, don't just because you saw it on YouTube doesn't mean it's a fact. Experience it, see it, mess it up yourself, and then figure out how to fix it and solve it, and then tell that story. And very recent, last year's permaculture convergence, someone came up to me and said, Rakesh, yeah, it's me. I was on one of your course about 15 years ago. Wow. And she said, yeah, and you told me this story 15 years ago, and it's stuck with me ever since. And I'll be honest, I don't even remember telling that story, but it meant so much to her. She said, and I only just started getting back into permaculture last year, but that story totally changed my world. And she remembered it so well. I don't even remember the story, you know, and I supposedly told it to her. So stories are really powerful. They're really, and you say you speak from your heart. And so no matter what it is you're teaching, whatever it is you're training on, it comes from the heart. This is really important. The other second important thing for me is, and yeah, so you find your style as to how do you tell those stories. The other is to be completely honest for me. So if someone comes and asks you a question you do not know the answer to, do not blag, do not bluff, just say, no, I have no idea. That's really interesting. Yeah, I love that question. But be honest, you know, and say, right, let's work out what the solution is. Let's see if we can be between us, because I don't know. I've never done that before. I've never experienced that. But let's work it out. And let's collectively work out a solution to it. And I remember I was invited in a conference to teach people about growing food in straw bales, and I've never done it before. And they insisted that I do it. So okay, so I turned up, and I've got like 40 people in front of me, all wanted to learn how to, including the headmaster of a school. And at the end, you know, he came to me and said, when you first stood up and said, I have never made a straw bale garden in my life, I was thinking, what on earth am I doing here? This guy is supposed to teach us and he's never done it before. He said, but wow, because I just went through how my mind works. All right, if I was to grow food in a straw bale, then this is what I do. This is how I set this up. That's what I need to think about, where the water comes from, how it gets retained, how it will dry, where do the nutrients come from, and, you know, thinking about all these patterns and all these cycles. And I walked them through that whole process and said, right, these are all the things you need to solve. Now you've all got straw bales. here's a few extra pops, work it out yourselves and let them go and find solutions. And every single group solved it a different way. And it was really good. And then when they fed back from their heart, because they didn't follow a recipe. And he said, wow, he said, I've never seen anyone teach like that before. That was, because we really learnt. So it's about being honest. There was another time where I was teaching, someone did a teacher training course with me, and this is his first time teaching. And he really, you could see he was really passionate. He really loved this, and he had a lot of knowledge, but he was really not confident. And he kept getting lost. And you could see people were really getting quite frustrated, and he was getting more and more self-conscious and really starting to. So I said, okay, let's. So first of all, mind map. Don't try and read from a script. Mind map. 5 points that you need to get across in this half an hour. Then you work out how to navigate around those points in whatever way feels appropriate. But then more importantly, and then later on, I think as he started doing that and started getting confidence, he then, he just kept losing his way still. And I said, right, when you get lost, when you lose your train of thought, be honest and just tell the group, hey, where was I going with this? What was I talking about? And just ask the group. And what they will do is they will tell you where you were, and they will do their best to help you get back on track. They will love to do that. They're because they've connected with you through your stories, they will help you. And so just be honest. And honestly, but they loved him. They by the end of the course, they were absolutely in love with him, because he was a huge man, and he was like almost 2 meters tall, and I'm not. And so the two of us together, we really looked strange as a teaching partnership, and big but really beautiful heart. And as he starts telling his stories and with his passion, people just loved him. So yeah, be honest. Whatever you do, if you don't know something, don't be afraid to say, hey, I don't know that. Just be honest. And it makes you human. Makes you human. People will see that you're human. So that's it. Okay, I think we're out of time, aren't we? Sorry.
Just about there. Yeah, thank you so much, Rakesh. This was wonderful. We'll make this recording available. I hope more people watch it. Thanks to those who were able to be here today. Yeah.
We have 1 minute. I can just really quickly
please.
show you the culture board. So quite literally, you have all your different bits of culture that you co-create. This is what you as a group, as a family, as a community have created. So for example, you mentioned the bike rack. I call that the miss tree. It's the same thing. Anything you don't want to miss, you put on the miss tree to make. So so how well are we using the miss tree? If we haven't really started it, it starts off here, but you ask everyone every couple of days, right, where do you feel? So this is mangoes. This is about, going off track and going, starting talking about something you shouldn't have been talking about. And hey, help me get back on track again. Call it a mango, because, mangoes are sweet and juicy, but they're kind of messy, so the subject may be sweet and juicy, but it may not be appropriate to be eating a mango right at this moment with your best clothes on. So how often are you mangoing me, telling me that, hey, get back on track? And, and so the more you see, everyone's encouraged to place these wherever they feel they are, So is it seeded, i.e. not started? Is it sprouting? It's just starting to come to life. We're just starting to get to understand this. Is it leafing? Meaning it's really, we're beginning to really get this. It's starting to really grow. Is it flowering? Wow, it's almost there. We're really, really getting good at this. Or has it fruited? It's like, wow, we're really at the peak. And as I say, what's really important with the culture board, so this is the way that once you set a culture, quite often people may not stick to that culture. And this is how I solve that. What I do is I make sure that we look at this and we see if there's something consistently sitting at the seeding phase, I want to know why. And it could be one of two reasons. It could either be because it's not important enough, i.e., we thought it was, but actually it's not that important. Or it could be that there's something about us that, we're not feeling it for some reason and we need to address it. If it is still important to us, we need to address it. Or it could be just one person isn't feeling that. One person isn't feeling like they're being listened to. All right, we need to know that so that we can then do something about it. And by using this tool to keep finding out, fine-tuning, again, this is another tool to help find that kind of coherence. So that's the culture board.
Rakesh, just one quick question. I don't want to hold Dawn, but just because you brought this in this board, along the training, it can be changing, right? That's the idea. That one topic that could be, it just go now. How are we in this? Okay, just wanted to make sure that exactly. I understood.
So every 2 days, or 2 or 3 days, you invite people to change this, and if it was here, and someone says no, that's back here now.
Okay.
I want to know why you have degraded that. Why? Because it means something's not working for you. And only if I find out why, only then can I solve it. So yes, really important that this is tweaked throughout the course. And I invite people to just move things as and when they want, as and when they find it appropriate. Anyway, I also really have to go because I've got another training course.
Thank you so much.
How to grow food in small spaces. So I need to get off to that in 20 minutes. So beautiful, wonderful. Great to meet both of you and see you again, and everyone else. Lots of love. Have fun. And
thank you, Don.
See you next time.
Thank you. We'll continue this training conversation series next month, and the topic is going to be on specifically working with youth.
Yay! Lovely, beautiful.
Stay tuned.
Bye bye.
Okay, thanks a lot. Lots of love, everyone. Bye.